Welcome to Upfront, where we concentrate on leadership in various areas of our community. Today, we focus on mental health issues and a leader who has been awarded many times for her work. Andrea Paquette is president and founder of the Stigma-Free Society. I was so very impressed when I met Andrea for the first time several years ago, because although she had suffered for many years with disastrous effects of bipolar disorder, having been diagnosed over 14 years ago, she desperately wanted to ensure others didn't suffer like she did. We will talk about what she has learned during this program. Incredibly, while she had to fight hard to live with her disorder, she held down responsible work and pursued education. She holds a double major degree in political science and women's studies and has worked for the BC government in the areas of mental health and addictions, social development, and education. She is certified in mental health first aid and assist suicide prevention. She's also been trained and certified in the mental health first aid course. And Andrea was the 2015 Courage to Come Back recipient in mental health from Coast Mental Health and a winner at the Vancouver Island Business and Community Awards Top 20 Under 40. In 2013, Andrea received a prestigious Reintegration Award for mentorship from the National Council for Community Behavioral Healthcare in their Awards of Excellence, as well as the CFAX Mel Cooper Citizen of the Year Award here in Victoria. She is a published author and a well-known blogger for Bipolar Magazine and the Stigma-Free Zone blog, both internationally and highly acclaimed recognized websites. Andrea was also named the 2016 Bell Let's Talk Ambassador. Welcome, Andrea. Also known as Bipolar Babe.
Definitely. Thank you for having me here.
You're very welcome. What stigmas exist? There are more than just one or two. And perhaps also you can tell us about the success you've seen since you've been working with people with mental health issues.
Definitely. Our education in the past often was circled around the idea of mental illness consistently. And so as the Stigma-Free Society now, we realize there are so many other stigmas to focus on, whether it's gender identity, sexual orientation, racism, ageism, but definitely we have a focus on mental illness. And there's been some really great, amazing strides when it comes to the successes we've made with our education in the classrooms and the community. So for instance, when I gave one of my presentations in Richmond, a young man came up to me in grade 11 and he said that he had been experiencing psychosis since grade 3 and he just never knew it. But after having my presentation, he went and spoke to the school counselor, and as I was leaving the building, I realized he was getting the help that he needed. So
Powerful.
Very amazing, very amazing. And one of the things that I see quite often is young people saying that they want to now associate and get to know their parents better who perhaps have mental illness, or an aunt or a sister, cousin, where before they were stigmatizing them. And now they realize that they need love and care too.
There's a person who also came forward, speaking of serendipity, at the Courage to Come Back Awards, who's also become very, very involved in the society, Dave Richardson. Can you tell me about his connection and what's he bringing to the society?
When I won the 2015 Courage to Come Back Award, Dave Richardson came up to me, and I didn't know him. He was introduced to me through Mel Cooper from TELUS. It was really amazing because Dave walked up to me, shook my hand, and said, "I want to make stigma-free zones with you." And he is the co-founder of the Stigma-Free Zone movement, where we zone schools, businesses, organizations, and geographical areas together as stigma-free zones. Now the chair of our society and is a huge advocate for us. We are very grateful to have Dave on our side.
Andrea, sometimes I wonder if many of us don't even realize when we are stigmatizing somebody else. Mm-hmm. Some of them are obvious when you talk about gender identity as an example, perhaps, but other times it's all about education, isn't it? And making sure people are sensitive and aware Definitely. Of how their behavior appears to others.
And our programming has a main message that with our education, we want to create awareness of the various stigmas, the understanding of them, and the acceptance of ourselves and other people. That is the goal.
And you've already demonstrated peer support is huge. It's probably the major platform, it seems to me.
Definitely. Education and peer support are really our focus. Peer support is really amazing because with our support groups, we have 3 of them, people can go and just really identify with others who are going through a similar struggle, and to get them out of isolation and for them to know that they're not alone.
So speaking of that, you are surrounded by others who are sharing their stories. We have two of the wonderful presenters and supporters with us now. First of all, let's meet Robyn. Robyn Thomas. You're the Community Development Manager for Vancouver Island for the Stigma-Free Society. Tell me about your own background with mental health issues.
Yeah, for sure. So I actually started experiencing mental health issues when I was around 10 years old, but I didn't really know how to articulate that, and I didn't get any help for that until I was 26 years old, when I experienced 2 forced hospitalizations for depression, anxiety, and psychosis. And when I came home, I was, in the state of being very ashamed and humiliated for what I had gone through. And then I met Andrea and started working as a presenter for the Stigma-Free Society, and realized, wow, there are so many other people dealing with these same challenges. There's nothing to be ashamed of.
And there's no easy fix, I'm sure of that. So you call it lived experience. Those people such as you who share such a great story with others and are able to support them is much because you've been through the experience, I'm sure.
Yeah, I get a lot of feedback from students who come up to me and say, wow, that was so powerful to hear a personal story instead of just statistics, right? Because a lot of the students who come up and speak with me have never really had open conversations with their family or their school or their peer groups about mental health.
And Jacquie Gonzales, thanks for being here as well. So I know you've experienced trauma in your own background, and you're the lead facilitator for the Women's Support Group, which I guess happily is very successful. You seem to always have new people coming through the door. It's a mirror and a reflection of the fact that truly a lot of people are suffering from issues. Tell me about your background.
Well, when I was 43, I was diagnosed with bipolar, and I was medicated. I was still suffering from the illness, but I managed to cope with it and stay working and so forth. But in 2013, I had a real bad manic episode and was referred to a psychiatrist, who then changed my medication. But the best thing she did to me was refer me to the Bipolar Babes weekly meetings. And I met Andrea and went every week. It was just so wonderful to meet other women who were like me, and we could share and not be ashamed.
What would you say is the success of the Women's Support Group? You see these people every week?
Yes, we have a group of ongoing ladies of about 6 or 7 who come every week. Andrea will get a new lady who's asked about the meetings, and she'll email me, and then I email the lady about our meetings to let them know how everybody's so kind and we're suffering from mental illness as well, and so there's no stigma with that, and try and make them feel comfortable about coming, because I notice that sometimes somebody will say they're coming and it takes maybe 2 or 3 weeks. But I do weekly emails on Sundays to remind everyone of the meetings and just try and make them feel more comfortable, and they'll email me back and say, well, I think I'll try this week.
Do people need a doctor's note or anything to prove their...
No, you don't have to have a diagnosis. You don't have to have a doctor's prescription. You just have the willingness to be able to come and be heard and feel better.
And when and where are the meetings happening?
The meetings are Tuesday nights at the Fernwood Community Center at 1240 Gladstone Avenue.
Excellent. We're going to take a bit of a break, and we're going to learn about champions, because there are a number in our midst who are working with the Stigma-Free Society, and many that are on Vancouver Island. But there's room for more, so we'll tell you about that when we're back after the break. We're here talking about the really important work being done by the Stigma-Free Society. And Robyn, let's talk about the presentations. I read the website, which is stigmafreezone.com. There's so much great information about the support that you all offer and specific responses. And that's where I found out that you have had a lot of impact, especially on young people. So what is it exactly? How does it unfold, and what do you do when you do a classroom presentation?
Well, I start off with explaining a little bit about stigma and breaking down some of the myths associated with mental health stigma. And then I share my personal story. So that's often a way in which students really connect, because they go, oh wow, this isn't just information being put on me. This is someone who's been through this and can understand. And so, yeah, I've had many students come up to me afterwards and they're in tears, or they come give me a hug and they say, yeah, I'm living with schizophrenia or whatever it is, and I've never really been able to talk about it before. It's funny because I had this one experience where I went and spoke in a classroom, and it was one of those rare ones where I felt like we weren't really paying attention, and I left feeling really sort of down. And then I get this email the next day from a student who was in that classroom, and she said, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. A lot of people think that people with mental illness are bad and dangerous, but often they're loved family members. And she went on to explain how she had been given up for adoption when she was younger because her parents both had mental health issues. And she said, I've always felt so sad and angry with them for giving me up. But now, after your presentation, I realized they just needed more support, and I'm able to feel
what a
breakthrough.
Good about. Isn't that wonderful that she got that message? That's terrific. And I guess for a lot of people, it really is about isolation and loneliness and feeling like they're the only one with this issue or this problem. Is part of the success right now the fact that as a society in general, we are appearing to reach out and help more? That goes for everything, opioid problems, homelessness issues. I feel it myself, I see it. I wonder if you're experiencing that.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of the young people I speak with, as well as in the teens to 20s support group, it is loneliness that is a huge challenge for them. And I think, with our society becoming more sort of isolated in general, it's a really big problem. And just simply sharing those stories can make such a big difference, because a lot of people really still aren't able to talk about it in their family units. In older generations, that's been passed down as, we don't talk about this, or it's something to be ashamed of, or we've got to, power through and get through it on our own, when that's just not a healthy way to deal with.
Yeah. Your work as well, Jacquie, with the Women's Support Group, because you had also been a minister, I regard that as very special skills, and I'm sure that people really appreciate the fact that you're probably very well received as a good listener, but I'm presuming. What do you feel you bring to those groups?
Well, I think I bring kindness and love, and I remember all of the women's stories. So, for instance, in January, a lady who had started coming in September, said she just didn't think she was ever going to get well, and what would she do? And I turned to this other lady who I knew had the same experience, and she said, well, it's been 14 months for me, but I'm doing well now, and you're going to get better. It's going to get better.
There are successes.
There are successes.
You're examples of successes,
yes.
Really. And we need those role models to know that things are better. Is it also partly, do you think, an issue because mental health in many ways is rather invisible? It's not a physical handicap or disability.
Yes, I believe so. You are to yourself, and sometimes you just shut in because you don't want to be around other people or think that you're doing not well.
Yeah.
So on the success side, there's great things we can talk about in terms of champions. There are stigma-free zones that you mentioned earlier, Andrea. Dave wants to work on that idea. And there is one now in Victoria that I'd love you and Robyn to talk about. There was a recent event where you were supported by the City of Victoria.
Well, we're actually in partnership with the City of Victoria. They're working towards their stigma-free zone designation over the next few years. So we're going to be doing an entire needs assessment and community engagement to engage the community in really answering, what does a stigma-free zone look like for Victoria? And it's been very exciting because our champion Jeremy Loveday and Lisa Helps have really pushed this forward, and our event was a great success.
That's great. And what about champions in business and other areas in schools? Are you hoping for that as well? I think there is a school from this area, isn't there?
Yeah, so Spectrum Community School was the first ever school on Vancouver Island to work towards their stigma-free zone designation. And it was great because the students in the philanthropy club were just so enthusiastic about bringing this to their school. And they made a huge banner where they got other students to sign that they will pledge to be stigma-free. And they're working on monthly events to reduce stigma in their school. So not just mental health and mental illness, but other things as well, like racism and physical disabilities. And they're putting on a talent show as well to raise awareness about stigma. So it's really inspiring to see young people taking this initiative.
I guess because of the focus on anti-bullying as well, I tend to think that those kids at young ages are the ones that are receiving most of the backlash in terms of stigma. But is that true? Is that just my observation? What are you seeing?
Well, I believe that stigma, those negative judgments, those negative perceptions, it breeds bullying. Completely. So in a stigma-free zone where we're creating with this whole movement, a stigma-free zone is a safe place. It's where people have been educated about the stigmas, where the entire idea around acceptance of ourselves and other people really stomps out bullying without going forward and saying, we're here to stop bullying, but if we eliminate stigma and address all of those concerns, then we're definitely going to reduce bullying.
And it's asking for accountability from the individual. Sometimes not that easy to receive. Perhaps sometimes we have to shine the light on our own family units who may be stigmatizing.
Exactly.
Younger members, older members, as you mentioned, ageism is a stigma. What are some of the answers that you have found coming out of your group, Jacquie? I'm kind of curious because these are women, adult women, all ages?
Women, all ages. I'm the oldest at 67, but all ages. Oftentimes their worry is about work finding out they have bipolar. They want to be out. They kind of say, I want to be out, but I'm afraid of what the employer will do. So that's a big worry, and we have discussions over that.
And so we can take that forward into society working with employers.
Exactly. It's been really interesting I live in Vancouver now, I moved there a year and a half, and I've been working with various businesses and organizations from the Good Life Fitness Autism Hub and educating their staff and working with them and partnering, as well the Canada Revenue Agency, various businesses. Dave's business will be the first stigma-free zone, Octaform Systems Inc. So there's been a lot of work around businesses, workplaces, as well schools, and then the geographical areas.
I think that's terrific because I know you started in classrooms and that's all important work, but it's great to hear about this growth. We're going to talk even more about it after we take a brief break, and we're also going to talk about anti-bullying, and it's a catchword that is used so much now, but there has been progress made, so we'll talk about that after the break as well. The Stigma-Free Society has really grown and blossomed. It started here when I met Andrea Paquette, and she was known as Bipolar Babe, and she was doing a huge amount of work on Vancouver Island. It expanded to the Lower Mainland. They've been in the north. I'm going to ask Andrea about that in a moment. But Robyn, let's first of all talk about the anti-bullying stance that's so important in schools and classrooms. Connects in a way to what you're doing with the Children's Mental Health Program of the Stigma-Free Society, and that's especially focused on grades 4 to 6, is it?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun going into elementary schools and talking about mental health. And one of the big assumptions that I find parents have or adults have is that, oh, kids in elementary school, they're way too young to have mental health issues. Yet many of us, myself included, that's where it started, right? So a big part of the Children's Mental Health Program is giving kids the vocabulary to be able to even articulate if there's something wrong. Because we're very good at explaining, oh, I have a a sore tummy or a broken leg. But when it comes to mental health, giving tools to know how to even express when something's wrong or be self-aware.
Valuable information for kids.
Yeah, and then we do also touch on anti-bullying and the idea that, okay, well, just because somebody looks different or you might want to make fun of them, well, maybe get to know them first and find out what their story is. And also sharing examples of people that they admire, people like J.K. Rowling, for example, who deals with depression, and looking, hey, there's nothing to be ashamed of this. Let's talk about it.
That's excellent. Other young people that you deal with are teens to 20s, and I know you were so passionate about working with this particular sector that you started it in your basement at one point, Andrea. So what is it that you're trying to communicate to that specific group, and how do you do it?
Well, I felt that in 2009 there was very little resources for young people who were dealing with mental illness. So I saw a real gap for ages 15 to 25, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to start this in my basement suite. And now we have the Teens to 20s as a long-term running program at the Quadra Village Community Center. So a lot of the problems that they have really is I find a lot of young people isolate, and the Teens to 20s group is really beneficial for the fact that Robyn, who runs it, there's a lot of activities, ways to engage, slam poetry, from going out to game nights, and it's really evolved since I've started it, and it's really a beautiful thing to see it blossom.
That's terrific to hear. And there's how many students participating, or young people participating, I should say?
Well, we've helped hundreds over the years, definitely. So we like to see anywhere from 4 to 8 participants an evening. That is our goal. And you know, sometimes young people can show up in flocks, and sometimes it's just like 1 or 2 people. But it's not always about the numbers, I find. It's about the quality of time. You can change somebody's life by spending 1 hour with them, and sometimes people need that time, so it's very valuable.
In terms of reach, though, it's quite phenomenal to me how many thousands of students and adults have heard the presentations from you, which indicates it's necessary, it's really needed. It almost sounds like we're thirsty for this kind of knowledge.
Definitely, especially since I've moved to the Lower Mainland, we've upped our numbers by the thousands. I did a calculation the other day about how many people I've reached directly with Robyn, I believe, and directly with our presentations. We've reached over 28,000 since 2010.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And one of the newest areas that you've been visiting is Chetwynd Terrace area.
Yeah.
Did you meet any Indigenous teams up there when you were working?
Well, I did a presentation for Northern Health, and there was some people there from, who were Indigenous and had an interest in mental health, as well. Robert Pictou, basically one of the very well-known media individuals there. He's Indigenous, and he shares his stories in Terrace, BC. That was really exciting to be up there in Kitimat, Chetwynd, and it's been quite an honor as well to be in Dawson Creek. So we are expanding provincially, and potentially even now going to have a pilot for Stigma-Free Zone, where Dave is from, Dave Richardson, our co-founder, in Winnipeg.
That's exciting. It's a BC-born success story, I think. It really is.
Yeah.
Stigma-Free Zone. I want to leave people with stigmafreezone.com because it's a very comprehensive website. You can look under programs and find out all about the support groups and information. I want to leave with perhaps just touching on harmful stereotypes. Is there a quick word you could give about that? Or how do we break through? How do we break it down for ourselves to make sure we're catching ourselves before we take that step? Is there any words you have of wisdom there?
Well, sometimes stigma is a lot more subtle than the idea of, oh, the violent, scary person, right? Sometimes what I've heard a lot in high schools is the assumption that people with a mental health issue are saying they have a mental illness to get attention. Whereas we would never say that if someone had cancer or something physical, right? Yet with mental health, we feel that we can make those judgments. So I think one of the biggest things is sharing stories and showing that this is something that can happen to anybody, no matter what you look like or where you come from.
And maybe just remembering compassion. Your kindness words are so important there, Jacquie, to remember to be compassionate.
I'm very compassionate. Plus, I also remember each of the ladies' stories so I can follow them each week and be a little more help to them with what's going on in their life.
Excellent. Any final words from you, Andrea?
I just want people to know that the Stigma-Free Society exists for so many reasons, but the one thing I emphasize in every single speech that I give is the fact that no matter what our challenges, we can all live extraordinary lives.
I think that's excellent. Thank you so much, Robyn Thomas, Jacquie Gonzales, and Andrea Paquette from the Stigma-Free Society. I really appreciate your candid, honest answers and giving us so much hope for the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Upfront, and we'll be hoping to see you again next month when we concentrate on another leader. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye for now.